but what is not.
So, just recently, we watched a Shakespearean play, Macbeth.
Yeah, it was a real eye-opener.
Anyways, like any normal Shakespearean play, it was somewhat hard to understand everything. However, throughout the play, one of the more prominent features which stood out was the nature of tragedy.
Indeed, and that led us to come up with our own interpretations of tragedy. We'll start with mine. I believe tragedy is simply a waste of the protagonist. There are some other elements that contribute to the nature of tragedy. However, a tragedy focuses on the hero and how his or her world collapses around them. In Macbeth, it is Macbeth's hamartia and lust for power. This is what I essentially believe to be the nature of tragedy.
You have some great points. In my eyes, tragedy is, and excuse the cliche, but is so much more than a few simple words, but rather an amalgamation of all the crucial elements of story, ranging from the wicked acts and the minds of characters to the hamartia, to make what I believe is fundamentally a tragedy.
Alright, so there are obviously some clear disparities and similarities in our judgment on what we believe to be the nature of tragedy. We both said particular elements such as the hamartia, the fatal flaw of the character. We also agree that in the battle between good and evil, evil wins in a tragic text. However, looking at the differences in our interpretations, there are other factors such as the structure of the text that perhaps manipulates the story to make it more tragic, whereas in mine I believe it is focused on the hero and his actions.
Yeah, well said.
Now let's discuss our first impressions on the play.
Well, come to think of it, I was particularly intrigued with the three weird sisters. Their whole experience seemed to have taken the wheel of Macbeth's fate and driven it into a war. Overall, Macbeth's obsession with the prophecies led them to be true, him killing Duncan and never dying to a man born of woman, which led him to being killed by Macduff.
Honestly, I couldn't agree more, especially as we have a new definition, which leads me to my next point. We gathered other people's understandings on what makes a text tragic, based on their experiences, and produced a new definition. The nature of tragedy revolves around the protagonist and his or her environment. The nature of tragedy consists of combined elements which makes it tragic, such as tragic waste, good versus evil, conflict, and many more.
Anyways, let us not bore you in our opinions, and perhaps give you a fresh set of eyes with an interpretation of tragedy from Dave in the audience. When I first watched the play Macbeth, many things came to mind. Firstly, the three weird sisters must have been a crucial part to the play, as they seemed to be really loud and dominant over everything. Secondly, Macbeth seemed really weak and fragile in comparison to his friends, the witches, and even his own wife. At the start, he was definitely the valorous soldier, but as the play went on, he became sunken among others. I did notice some elements of tragedy, but I was mainly focused on Macbeth. On the other hand, opening the first page of the written play was a different story. Firstly, the witches seemed less, prominent amongst the characters. Also, in the written play, I could focus on all the elements of tragedy, while focusing on the characters' tragic traits. I gained a much better perspective as it was right there in front of me to analyze in depth, and I could always refer back to it. Well, his impressions were quite insightful, but clearly he preferred the written version of the play, showcasing how the nature of tragedy seems to be more identifiable in the written play.
Thanks again to Dave in the audience. Now let's look at some other texts which reflect the nature of tragedy and tragic themes. The Great Gatsby follows Jay Gatsby, a man who orders his life around one desire, which is also his hamartia, to be reunited with Daisy Buchanan, the love that he lost. Gatsby's quest leads from him being in poverty to wealth, and into the arms of his beloved, and eventually to death. The connection of hope and ambition between Macbeth and the Great Gatsby is quite apparent. In the Great Gatsby, Jay's journey of becoming the perfect man ends up annoying someone who plots to kill him. Wrong person. The theme of appearance versus reality is also evident between these two texts. Macbeth puts on the act of being heroic and innocent, when really he was committing and plotting crimes. Jay tries to portray himself as old money and the perfect man, when really he just wanted Daisy.
That's a great insight into how the nature of tragedy is a recurring theme within both contemporary and historical texts. Society has evolved into a more quality-based lifestyle, particularly based around gender roles. This can be seen in Lady Macbeth's controversial, manipulative personality. Is Lady Macbeth actually responsible? Or are we contextually conditioned to see her that way, due to the fact she is portrayed as an ambitious female? In comparison, Ophelia from Hamlet is innocent and virtuous, but is looked down upon by Hamlet. At various points in the play, Hamlet is cruel and mean to Ophelia. Following the tragic death of her father, Ophelia is driven to insanity and kills herself. The similarities and differences are quite transparent, such as the cruel suicidal demise of both characters, and their conflicting personalities. Looking at contemporary tragedies, this ultimately showcases how gender roles and tragedies have evolved or have been appropriated to fit modern-day society.
Nothing is, but is what not. You may have heard us say it at the start of our talk. It quite simply means nothing seems as what it really is. Macbeth tried to seem innocent and jovial to his peers, but we knew better. However, Macbeth is the hero, the protagonist. We just witnessed him spiral into failure. Hence, we feel catharsis towards the end of the text.
Throughout the story, it appears to be Macbeth versus Macduff, but in hindsight, it was really Macbeth versus Macbeth.
Tragedy wants you to believe there is good. However, there is none.
Thank you for your time, ladies and gentlemen. That's all we have for you today.